British government likes to talk the talk on climate change.
A country that leads the way with clean, green technology.
As this promotional video shows, it accepts the need for radical and drastic action to prevent the catastrophic consequences of climate change. And it's true, the government has made progress domestically in cutting emissions. At the heart of government, though, there's a problem. Tucked away in Whitehall is a tiny government agency that you've probably never heard of, United Kingdom Export Finance. The activities of that agency threaten to undermine the entire climate change strategy of the government.
UK Export Finance is the government's dirty secret when it comes to fossil fuels.
On the one hand, the UK government is calling itself a climate leader, and on the other hand, it is essentially acting as a slush fund for the fossil fuel industry on the world stage.
This is what UKEF does, in their own words.
UK Export Finance's mission is to ensure that no viable UK export fails for lack of finance or insurance.
Their job is to help British exporters to sell more goods and services overseas and grow the British economy.
UKEF packs a punch. Its current liabilities in insurance, guarantees and loans amount to £31 billion. But it's support for the energy sector, and in particular fossil fuels, that has attracted attention. I've been looking into these fossil fuel projects in a bit more detail to try and get a better understanding of their environmental impact. Helpfully, the UKEF's own website gives details of the estimates of the carbon footprint of each project that it finances. Along with Greenpeace's Unearth team, we established which projects UKEF has liabilities for, and then, using annual accounts, the total estimated emissions for each project it helps to finance. Many of these projects have multiple backers, but this is what your taxpayer pounds are helping to finance. Gas and oil production in Brazil, nearly £2 billion worth of financing since 2010. The UK government estimates the total emissions from that project as 17 million tonnes of CO2 each year. Oil refinery construction in Kuwait and Oman, we've committed over £1 billion to that. The government estimates that project will emit nearly 12 million tonnes of CO2 when complete. 2 power stations in Iraq to a tune of £750 million. Together, when they're operational, they'll emit 7 million tonnes of CO2. And there are other projects we help to support too, across the world in places like Ghana and India, to name but 2. According to government estimates, the total carbon emissions for these projects, when complete, will be 69 million tonnes of carbon per year. So how much is that? Well, this tiny government agency finances projects that contribute the equivalent of nearly a sixth of the total UK's greenhouse gases every year, or to put it another way, the annual carbon emissions of Portugal. Not all of these projects have been built yet, and a source in UKEF told me that estimates were a worst-case scenario. Kerry McCarthy MP looked into UKEF as a member of the Environmental Audit Committee last year. We showed her our figures.
It's just absolutely ludicrous that we would be funding something overseas that we are purporting to be moving away from in our own country. So there's just a complete disconnect, there's a complete hypocrisy that we boast of cleaning up our own act, but actually we're enabling other countries to carry on polluting.
In a statement, UKEF told this programme, "We're committed to working with countries across the world to unlock their renewable energy potential and support their transition away from fossil fuels to cleaner alternatives." But it's hard to see how some of their financing decisions tally with that commitment. Take Brazil, for example. The UK has given a massive line of credit to Petrobras, one of the biggest oil companies in the world, operating in one of the richest countries in the world. It's hard to see how investing in a massive oil exploration project tallies with the UKEF statement.
There are a lot of countries in the world that need to transition their energy systems into the 21st century and actually develop and become more prosperous. And that energy transition now should go directly to renewables. There is absolutely no need to invest in new fossil fuel infrastructure when we're in a climate emergency.
So why does the British government finance these projects? We asked UKEF for an interview as part of this piece, which they declined. Eamon Butler from the Adam Smith Institute told me why he thinks the financing is worth it.
We're creating trade links with other countries that otherwise we might not have, and trade is good. What the West is good at is oil, gas, clean coal, nuclear. Those are the sorts of things which it makes perfect sense that we should be exporting rather than leaving everything to the Chinese.
UKEF told this programme that its fossil fuel financing helps the UK's oil and gas sector and protects jobs. It's officially considering supporting more fossil fuel projects too, like this offshore project in Mozambique. The country is one of the poorest in the world, and it could have a huge impact on its economy. But according to a previous impact assessment, it has been projected to emit 13 million tonnes of CO2 when complete. To put that into context, the UK purports to have prevented 10.4 million tonnes of carbon emissions from their investments in renewables abroad since 2011. On the one hand, the government warns about the dangers of poorer countries adopting dirty energy. But on the other hand, United Kingdom Export Finance seems to be facilitating exactly that. Sam Hall was Michael Gove's advisor when he was Environment Secretary and now head of the Conservative Environment Network.
I think the UKEF is a blemish on the UK government's record on climate change. I think it's an overhang from an age where government hadn't properly and fully internalised what climate change means. It is an inconsistency that does need to be addressed.
Do you speak to Conservative MPs who are worried about this?
I have had conversations with Conservative MPs about this, yes.
And they're worried?
Yes. I think this is definitely something that is one of those issues where I think there's a desire to make progress and to properly reflect our international climate commitments in this area of government policy.
We approached the government for comment last week. On Monday this week, a statement from the Prime Minister.
There's no point in the UK reducing the amount of coal we burn if we then trundle over to Africa and line our pockets by encouraging African states to use more of it. So from today, the British government will no longer provide any new direct official development assistance, investment, export credit or trade promotion for thermal coal mining or coal power plants overseas.
The problem with that statement is that as far as we can tell, UKEF doesn't currently finance any coal projects. All of its fossil fuel financing is for oil and gas.
Boris Johnson has said this week that there'll be no more coal paid for by the UK taxpayer. Well, it wasn't really happening anyway. It's like having a to-do list that you've already done and marking it off. If the UK government is serious about tackling the climate change problem, it needs to remove oil and gas from its overseas export finance.
In Glasgow later this year, the UK will hold the global COP26 climate change conference. The eyes of the world will be on the UK.
I think this is an issue that the government needs to solve before COP26. I think if it doesn't, there will be a lot of attention, both from the international community, but also, development and environmental NGOs who will point to this as a clear failing in UK government policy.
There are other export agencies that have taken action. Sweden's export finance equivalent has capped its fossil fuel investments. 2020 is an opportunity for Britain to lead the world on climate change. Its policies are about to be scrutinised like never before.